Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. It was a little rocky intro here. This is Sunny, and welcome to Tuesday Voices from the Alternative World, Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. My special guest today is Lynn from Sharing Gardens in Oregon, and we will no doubt have a lively, interesting discussion here. And I am now going to welcome everyone that's here online, and if anybody's listening on YouTube later, welcome you as well. So I'm now going to invoke the law of one, which is the universal law that unites everyone and everything as one, and the universal healing energy. We are all one. When one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. And I am one with all there is. Therefore, in the name of who I am, I ask that only that which serves the greater good of all concerned on earth and in the universe and beyond happen now, here and now. And I give thanks that it be so, and it is done, and it is so be it. Blessings. Okay. So be it. Okay, now, Lynn, I'm really happy to have you join us after a month of trying to do it before and it didn't work out that time, but here we are now. And I would like to, I think you might want to talk a little bit about the ideals and the basic philosophy that you and Chris are as a foundation for the Sharing Gardens, and perhaps even mention that the One Rule Family Commune, some of the, even though you weren't there, Chris certainly was and I was, but there were certain principles that were carried out there, basic principles of sharing and not having money exchanged between us and all that kinds of things that maybe you'd like to discuss. Would you like to discuss
Sounds
that?
good.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'll start by giving an overview of what the Sharing Gardens are, and then we can just follow your curiosity about that. And basically, the Sharing Gardens is a community garden, but it's a different model than what most people are used to, because instead of each household having a separate plot, we have one large garden, and the labor and the harvest is shared by everybody who participates. Then the sizable surplus that we grow using this method is donated to local food charities, like 2 different food pantries within 15 miles of the Sharing Gardens. And no one has ever charged money for the food that's grown. It's freely given. And we also provide hundreds of starts, and we save a lot of our own seed, and we share that freely as well. And the garden is based on the principle of generosity, full circle generosity. Give and you shall receive. What goes around comes around. So we believe and are demonstrating that this is a universal law, a spiritual law, much like there are physical laws like gravity and magnetism and those good things. And what we have found over the last 7 years is that when we give without thought of receiving, when we give without accounting for our giving, that all kinds of miracles show up, and a tremendous level of abundance and health and good feelings are generated through this model.
Well, that's really beautiful how that has been demonstrated to you and Chris. That I understand your home was donated. I mean, you didn't have to.
We had our housing journey has been kind of an interesting reflection of this principle, because right as we were getting started with the sharing gardens in 2009, we were living in a rental, and our monthly expenses with rent and utilities and all of that was $800 or more, and we were really frustrated because, like any rental situation, you just see that money going out from your account and you never have anything really to show for it. And so we put an ad up on a local bulletin board looking for some kind of a work trade kind of situation in a modest house, and the first people that responded had a 8-foot by 40-foot travel trailer that they were willing to let us live in exchange for $100 a month and 10 hours of work trade, and that covered our utilities and our rent. So all of a sudden, we shifted from having, really a strong need to keep our income coming in to where we suddenly had a lot more time on our hands. So that was the first kind of miracle around the housing. And we lived there for 3.5 years, and then that began to become too tight, and there were just some various limitations with it. So we put it out to the universe, we're ready for the next step. And one of our volunteers had a house just like a 10-minute walk from the sharing gardens that was going to go into foreclosure, and she wasn't interested in keeping up the payments, and she already had another place to live. And she checked with the bank and said, do you guys want to, and to find out if it was legal and for us to move in there. And it turns out the bank actually preferred it because that means that the house is heated and that there's not vandalism and the rodents are kept at bay, et cetera, et cetera. So we were there for, I think, like 1.5 years or something. And so that was rent-free. It was a 5-bedroom, 1936 farmhouse, 10 or 15-minute walk from the gardens. So that was a wonderful blessing. And then the land where we had been growing food since 2010 here in Monroe came up on the market. And the agreement that we'd had with the owner, he let us farm here for free, and in fact paid for the pump to be fixed on the well and paid for the electricity to run the well from 2010 till 2013, I think. And the deal was that once we were going to be, if he sold it, that we would have until the end of the growing season to find another place, and then we would need to, move on. Well, when he passed away, his offspring assured us that this was, they weren't going to kick us out anytime soon, and then they decided that they really had to put the place on the market, and they came to tell us first. And part of the reason it hadn't sold was they were asking over $300,000 for 3.5 acres, and so we felt pretty confident it wasn't going to sell anytime soon, because that's a lot for around here. Mm-hmm. And the son came to us first and mentioned that they were moving towards putting on the market. And Chris almost didn't even ask what the price was, because he thought he already knew, and it was way out of our price range. But he asked them, and the guy said, well, we'd like to stay, keep it from going through the real estate companies, and if you guys were interested, we dropped about $200,000 off the asking price, and they made it available for $135,000. And so I had just come into an inheritance in the year prior to that, and we were able to purchase the property for cash. It's 100% paid for. And then we've gone on to apply for exemption from property taxes because we are a legal nonprofit and a charity. And so we went through that process in the courts, and we were actually given 50% off of our tax bill as well. So that's the long answer of some of the miracles that have occurred just around the land and the housing.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that clarified it for me. That's so you have the house, and you don't have to, it's yours, and you don't have to pay a mortgage or anything else on it. So that's really wonderful.
Yeah, it feels very secure.
Yeah, it looks like you really have had a series of blessings just because of what you do is such a service. And the universe is kind of giving back.
That's the way we interpret it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would seem that way. Well, yeah, so is there anything more about the project you'd like to share?
I guess the other aspect that I didn't go into much before is that in 2012 we were contacted by somebody who teaches courses up at the university. The closest university is Oregon State University. It's about a 20-25 minute drive from here. And one of the professors had what he calls service learning. And so part of what his students do to get credit is that they each have to put in 4 hours of volunteer work somewhere in the community. And so we tried it out, and over the last 4 years have actually grown to now have 4 groups of 6 students each quarter. So spring, winter, and fall, we have 24 students for 4 hours, and man, did they get a lot done. So that's been a really kind of organic turning of the focus for our project, because until we had the student help, it was all run, all the labor was done by Chris and myself, and then local, just private citizens, neighbors or people from the surrounding area would come and help us with the gardening and stuff. And now we have so much help from the students that we've actually had to tell our regular volunteers to kind of back off sometimes so that we'll have enough to keep the students busy when they come. And so that's been really cool. And then last June, one of the coordinators for the service learning got in touch with us and said, hey, there's this grant money that's come available. Do you guys have any kind of projects that fit certain criteria? I'd be happy to write the grant for you even. And that sounded pretty sweet. And so Deanna wrote the grant for us, and we got it approved, and they've approved $3,500 reimbursement for the materials needed to build another greenhouse. And the greenhouse frame was actually donated by a neighbor who didn't want it on his property anymore. And so with volunteer help, we went and dismantled it from his and brought it over here. And now it's getting set up here. And one other aspect about that that's just recently happened is that another professor on campus who is also teaching about sustainability issues, she got in touch with us and asked us if we would like to come and give a slideshow and a lecture in one of her classrooms. And so we did that last month, and that was really rich. So we kind of feel like the university is really appreciating what it is that we do with the students and wanting to facilitate more and more of that happening, and we're pretty excited about that too.
Well, that's really wonderful, yeah, because then you're teaching them and they're learning about a different way of doing things than the ordinary way of buying and selling and all that. They're learning
That's
about.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So they're learning that is a possibility, and plus all the wonderful ways in which your project has been supported, and they can see that. So that's a great demonstration. Yeah. Besides them learning about organic gardening, and which is so important for them to know about in these times, especially.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And also, you know, many of these students don't. Hold on a second. So anyway, if a lot of these students really haven't played in the dirt since they were little kids, you know, and don't have a lot of familiarity with tools and how to use them, and so they're gaining that experience as well.
Yeah, and they're enthusiastic about it. They really like what they're doing.
I'd say we get the whole range, everywhere from. I just signed up for this because it fit my schedule. We definitely, you know, have some of those that come, but there are others that are already really interested in organic gardening and sustainability issues, and they're really excited to come and be a part of things. And so we have the whole range, and the ones, you know, it's what's really kind of gratifying is the ones that come with a real kind of blasé attitude and are just kind of doing it because they're getting credit for it. Every once in a while you'll really see one of them catch the spark of what we're doing and come alive during the course of the morning and leave with thank yous and appreciation and, you know, a sense that they got something too. It wasn't just that they were giving their time.
Sure, yeah. They probably just had no idea because they hadn't had, you know, they just hadn't had any experience with it before. They didn't know how it would feel to them or anything, but it's so wonderful to hear that they did awaken more or less to the just how special the experience is, and so yeah, that's great to hear.
Thank you. Yep.
Sure. Well, you're
I'm curious.
Yes,
I was curious of you if there was, you know, ways that you already can recognize that what we're doing here was in harmony, you know, is in harmony with what you remember from your One World Family experience, because I know we were kind of curious to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, well, you are carrying out the basic principles of sharing, and, you know, there was a lot of other, I guess you say a lot of teachings that were there, but we participated in services through the restaurant in Berkeley, and earlier before that we had restaurants in Haight-Ashbury and also in Marin called the Mustard Seed. It was a service, though the people that came to the restaurant did pay for the food, but it was pretty minimal. We had a Zen plate for $1 or $1.50, which would feed, you know, basic foods like rice, beans, salad, and that kind of thing. And so it really did serve the community and all the people that were part of the commune. We did it. We didn't receive wages, and we had all our housing and our food and, you know, and all of that were provided through the services that we provided. So that
right.
That's just the basic way we did the commune.
Mhm.
Yeah, without buying and selling for secular profit, as we would say. But
Sure.
with amongst us, we didn't buy and sell. We just served.
Right.
So,
exactly.
And then later on, in Berkeley, we didn't have a garden. There wasn't, except the People's Park was just up the road from us. But we Sacramento, when the Sacramento project started, and Chris was a part of that, we started a little garden there. And I remember really being into the herbs at that time. I just loved herbs. I just, different herbs that I planted. And it was, in Sacramento, but in a little, not quite as, urban area. And then we had the Musto restaurant there, which was near the Capitol. So that was the first garden I remember in the One Rule family. And then later in Stockton, I remember Chris was real involved in this. There was a vacant lot area, or a much larger area. And yeah, I am sure he's told you all about that. So
some real reclamation projects, turning unused land into producing food. Yeah.
Right.
Well, one of the things that we see about the Sharing Gardens model is that it's really easy to replicate any place that you do have ground and water and somebody with, basic gardening experience to kind of coordinate that aspect. But it doesn't take a lot of infrastructure or a lot of money in order to do it. And we haven't kept records in a couple of years, but back when we were keeping pretty close records of how much food we were growing, 6,000 pounds for this summer. And then if you translated that into what it would have costed people to buy that much organic produce, is quite extraordinary. And another aspect of the gardens is that, and a benefit of this model is that because, like if you're just growing your own separate plot and you wanted to do any kind of food preservation or canning, you need to have enough of, let's say, tomatoes come on ripe at the same time in order to make it worth it to get your canning jars out and your canner heated up and all of that. Well, in the Sharing Gardens, we've grown about 100 tomato plants every summer, so of 8 or 9 different varieties. So there will be, maybe 3 cases of a certain kind of tomato that come ripe at the same time. And that way the volunteers can take home a whole case or 2 and do a really big batch, which just makes it all the more worthwhile. So that's another benefit to growing in this style. Yeah, well, gee, so you had some. Did you keep the same varieties in the canning process? Did you keep the similar varieties together, more or less? Yeah, we grow. We'll grow a whole row of cabbage or a whole row of lettuce or a whole row of. Usually it's like 4 rows or 6 rows of tomatoes, and that makes it easier for harvesting because you just go down the row with your basket or box and it's all the same things there. Makes it easier to water because things that have similar watering needs can be grown together. Makes it easier for succession planting. So, you'll do a big planting in the kind of late spring or mid-spring for the cool weather stuff, and then another planting at early June for all the squash and tomatoes and like that, and then another planting at the end of July, and those are your winter crops, and so, you know, if you're pulling out a whole row of lettuce or harvesting a whole row of lettuce, then, and you have the succession crops to put in, then you can just pop those in right once the lettuce is out, and the same row can have 2 or 3 crops over the course of a year.
Yeah, well, that's great, and they'd be compatible crops. Right? I mean,
Sure.
What the soil.
And you have to be sure that you feed the soil in between, because, you know,
yes.
for every calorie that you take out, you need to put at least a calorie of nourishment back into the earth, and that's another aspect of our project that's kind of unique. You know, there's this big movement towards eating more local food. Have you heard of that? You know.
Oh, yes. In our community, you know, we're very much, encouraged to do that.
Yeah, and what a lot of people haven't quite pieced together yet is that your food is only as local as the amendments, the fertilizers, etc., that the farmer puts in between crops. So, in other words, if you have to import your gypsum from Saudi Arabia, how sustainable is that, and how local is that if the supply lines should cut down, or, you know, it just became so expensive to transport it, then you're dependent on this product that is coming from a long, long distance. So what we've been developing at the Sharing Gardens is a much more local way of feeding the soil, and that has to do with feeding the worms and the microorganisms right in the soil. So we use huge amounts of leaves and grass clippings and spoiled hay from farmers around here, some modest amounts of manure, but by feeding, we call them our micro livestock. So by feeding the worms and the bacteria directly in the soil, they are pooping and peeing just like cows would, or rabbits, or wherever else you get your manure from, and they are doing it in a balanced way that makes it bioavailable for the plants to take up those nutrients. And we've got several neighbors trained to either bring us their leaves and grass clippings or call us when they have them bagged up, and then we go pick them up and bring them back here. And we've just got this huge operation of composting, and then also applying it, like I said, just directly on the soil. And as long as it has enough time for the worms to break it down and turn it into soil, then our plants just grow like crazy.
Well, that sounds like the perfect recycling, and
it's very, very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. And we also salvage a lot of building materials. We follow Craigslist several times a day. We're checking the free section, and if there's lumber or fencing materials or those sort of things, we've scored amazing. And because neither Chris and I are working, we're free to drop everything at a moment's notice and go get it and bring it back. And we both like pulling nails out of boards and recycling the lumber and building materials. And so that's another real strong commitment that we have with the gardens.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, you don't have to go and buy a lot of things because the things are available that people are more or less don't need anymore. And just, again, an example of recycling in the community. So that's really good to hear. I was just thinking how you guys could write a book about how to do all these. I know you've got the blog and everything, but I was just thinking you could write a book about how you do this, this sustainable, keeping it local and, utilizing everything that
Well, we do have a very extensive blog site, and I can just mention that now if people want to look us up. It's thesharinggardens.blogspot, B as in boy, L-O-G, spot.com, and you can also look us up by just doing a search for the Sharing Gardens in Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E, and we're always on the first page for that search. And we range, we're getting about 5,000 visits per month to our site from all over the world currently at this low ebb of the garden season. And last June at the high peak, we were getting over 8,000 per month.
Wow.
And the website goes into a lot of how-tos, that kind of things that I've been talking about today, but it also really goes into the philosophy that underpins the project and talks about generosity and sharing and the joys of that, and how to help people shift from seeing that might be a hardship or something threatening, where people often think when they hear the word sharing, they think that it means that they will have less for themselves if they share, or what if they share and nothing comes back. And our website is just full of all of these examples where the opposite happens, where when you're generous, the universe rewards that. And if you look in nature, there's no other species that buys and sells their food, their clothing, their shelter. We're the only ones that keep track of that and try to make a profit off of it. And so the gardens, the Sharing Gardens, is meant to be resonant, draw from the example of nature, that if each of us is in service and in alignment with Spirit and in that spirit of generosity, that not only will those around us be blessed, but that we will be blessed as well, that it comes full circle and multiplies.
Well, that's really true, that we're the only species on the planet that buys and sells, and all the other, the birds and the animals, they all know their place. I mean, they just naturally know what they're there for, and how they kind of have this balance between each other. And of course, humans have interfered with this balance quite a bit, but somehow they're still making it. And our planet
Mother Earth hasn't kicked us off just yet, but I think she's thinking about it.
Gee, you humans have really tried to mess things up here. But wow.
Yeah.
It's with all the chemical companies, Monsanto, and all that they're trying to do, and but
sure. And our culture rewards competition and psychopathic behavior. It rewards the statistics say that there's, I forget the numbers, I'm terrible with remembering numbers, but there's some percentage of people in society that move through life and it's all about getting for self, and they don't care who they step on or what happens to, in order that they get their way. And then you look at the subset of CEOs and heads of companies, and the percentage jumps by a huge amount, and they're getting the rewards for being cutthroat and being competitive, et cetera, and but they're also missing out. I mean, there is such an incredible joy, I find, in, like, I've worked for a living, and I know what that feels like, and I've also done a lot of volunteer work, and there is a different quality when you are being in service because you choose to be there and you want to give, and it makes it more pleasurable for you to do whatever it is that you're doing. So that's just one example of the rewards.
Yes, you experience that, and when I've observed people that are in service kinds of work, like even nurses and care providers and things like that, I think, well, would they want to do this if they weren't getting paid? Is it really in their hearts to want to help people? Those often cross my mind, and my recent experiences in care facilities and all. I can kind of feel and tell the ones that have their hearts into it. I mean, they're caught up in the money system. They've got mortgages to pay and they've got bills, and so they're caught up in that system. But it's like they're there because they feel the calling. They want to help people, be of service, or is it just a job? They're just kind of pushing their way through. And I think, gosh, the ones that are there, the night nurses, boy, I mean, and that's really something else. So those people are there all night, and they just have to respond to everybody's needs. So, it's been an interesting experience from that point of view for me to, feel that they really, it's in their hearts to do what they're doing. And
right, so, and then I would imagine also the ones that go into it originally because it's in their heart, that it's probably very challenging for them to stay in their heart.
Yeah,
when they're surrounded by people that are working because they're getting a paycheck. Sure,
yeah. It's a whole mind and emotional set that they're in. Okay, just that they're not, they're there for a paycheck, or, and then that's all these rules and regulations they have to abide by and all. I get kind of just turned off by talk about finances. When people start talking about finances, I just kind of, it just kind of
plays over.
It's not organic.
No.
But that's the system that people we're all still living under that system, but it seems as though as the consciousness changes, people are, I read a lot of things on Facebook about things that people are doing. I say, yeah, that's good. They're really seeing these alternatives, and they're really seeing different ways of doing things, and more because it's in their hearts to do them. They may still need money to live. They haven't quite figured out how not to have money, but I mean, neither have I. But I've just had to, live with what I can receive to support my life right now. But in any case, I do see that, to make the transition into a moneyless world is an interesting thought. How does this really come about? How do we as a planet carry this out? And but
it's a funny phenomenon too. There are some restaurants around the world actually, but several in the United States and various places that have been quite successful over several years' time at the pay-it-forward concept, where your meal is already paid for and you make a donation so that future people can come and enjoy food at the restaurant. And what they found is that on average, in that system, people actually are more generous than if they had put a price tag on what the meals would typically cost at a comparable restaurant. and same thing for Chris and me is that that there have been times when our financial resources got thinner and we needed to generate some income, and so we would do odd jobs or landscaping, that sort of thing, and we would do it on a donation basis. So leaving it to the generosity or the discernment of the customer. And there again, it seemed like they were always more generous than if we'd given them an hourly rate that we were working for. And it shifted the quality of our time when we were providing the services, because we weren't on the clock in our own minds. We were going and we were going to do the job and we were going to do what it takes to get the job done well. And then the money comes later, and it's kind of then separated from the process of us doing the work. It isn't as directly tied in of we're going to get X amount for doing Y amount. So. Hello?
I just muted because a message is coming through on my landline. But Anyway, that's good. I wasn't catching everything you're saying, but I'm sure that everybody else was.
Very good. Just that when people work for money, that it's a different quality than when they're working for a donation or for a gift economy. Yeah.
Yes, it is a different quality. Yes, absolutely. Well, gosh, it's 6:15 now. Maybe we can invite some questions at this point, unless there's something else. I know you indicated that we were talking about the 60s and in the consciousness.
Right. Let's kind of stay with the sharing gardens for now, and I'm going to probably energetically need to wind it up in 15 or 20 minutes, just if that's okay. I'm not sure how long these usually go. But let's open it up for questions and go for it a bit.
Energetically for myself as well. That 15 minutes or so. So yes, let's see if
Sonny, I've got a question.
Yes.
Candy. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Candy.
Hi. So the video went out everywhere February 11th from Cliff Howe in Washington State. And he said that poisons from the chemtrails was bothering gardens so bad, especially bad in Washington State because they wanted it to thin out going east. And that he didn't think, he only used greenhouses, and he felt like people needed to have their gardens covered if they were in a high chemtrail area. And I wondered how your guest has addressed this issue.
I would not say that we've had really noticeable difference from chemtrail fallout. We have noticed that as the climate seems to be shifting, that we have to really garden for all contingencies. And, for example, last summer was extremely hot and dry for Oregon, for our part of Oregon. And just as an example, our winter squash that typically doesn't cure and isn't ready for harvest until the earliest would be like end of September, and often, will go mid-October or so. Well, anyway, it was cured and ready for harvest by the end of August. So that's a very big shift. And we're noticing that the birds are already coming into their spring colors that they do for courting, and that's quite early. We're noticing flowers blooming that shouldn't be yet, and So we're noticing shifts in the climate more so than specific, fallout from anything that we can identify as the the aerosols, the aluminum and such that apparently are getting dropped around these parts to affect the weather.
Well, that's a great update of nature. Thank you for sharing. And I absolutely adored all your stories you told regarding the students coming and work versus volunteering, donations instead of, asking for a fee. And all of those stories tonight, my dear, really painted a microcosmic picture of what we're changing into and giving all of us envisioning and a vision of how we can adjust our life, not just in gardening, but all life. So thank you so much. This is Elizabeth Diamond, and I'm a nurse, and I'm at work. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
How are you?
So I have a lot of follow-up about that topic on the gardening and the strange seasonings and how we make adjustments. Is that appropriate?
Well, one thing that Chris always teaches me, now mind you, he's had 45 years of gardening experience, and I've had about 8 or 9. So so if it goes into a lot of detail, then you'll have to have us back or Chris back to go into the specifics. But I can just tell you one general principle that he's taught me is that when you're gardening on a big scale, you want to plant for all contingencies. So you plant things that do well in wet, cold springs. You do things that will do well in hot, dry summers. You do and you do both, and so some things are going to do well and some things are not, and you never know as you head into a new growing season how it's all going to turn out, and that keeps it pretty fresh and interesting.
Well, it was such a shock to me last 2 years. 2 years ago, I had an abundance of cucumbers on every plant, and last year I had flowers, but none of them turned into cucumbers whatsoever, and they were planted in the same location. Is there anything that one can do to help a flower pollinate and actually turn into a cucumber? I mean, should I have picked every third and fourth one and ate the flowers and would that have, what can you do to make the?
I tell you what, you're getting out of my pay scale in terms of, and also a level of detail that just doesn't. There's so many factors, it could be that you didn't fertilize the soil well enough and you grew the same thing there again. It could have been that you got, that there's something in the area that killed off the pollinating insects, and so there weren't enough of them to pollinate. So there's so many factors, and you can't, it's really hard to diagnose, over the phone and at a distance and, hindsight, but you need to fertilize each year in one way or the other because those plants deplete the soil of nutrients, and it is a full circle process. We are doing all kinds of things to augment the wildlife habitat on all the way through our property, so that we have a lot of birds and we have a lot of insects and we have a lot of habitat for all the little critters, so they can do their part to make the gardens grow strong.
It's amazing the changes in the last 10 years, really swinging each year, whereas 20 years ago, I could have expected the same thing as I had 25 years ago or 15 years ago. It was very scary last year. I'm in the Ozarks. We had absolutely no walnuts produced, and this is the first time in 30 years, no black walnuts. And so I'm just amazed Black Walnuts hasn't jumped up higher in the stores because of this whole region not producing any black walnuts. Well, this is Candy. I host the call on the Diamond Network tomorrow, and would love to invite you to come back and participate more in our Diamond Network. And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Candy.
Glad you're here, Candy.
Hey, nice to hear from you, Candy.
Yes. Well, I want to say, when I was living on Maui and we tried to grow zucchini and things like that, they just didn't get pollinated somehow. They didn't. The little squashes and stuff just shriveled up, and that was just. It might have been not the right climate for them or something, but that was just the experience.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
I was curious. I heard Dale pipe in, and I know you said you had some questions coming into the call. Dale, do you want to ask one or two before we wind it up?
I really want to ask the most important one, and it's obvious that this subject is really the foundation of civilization. If we don't learn how to work with nature and learn how to be self-sufficient in food, the prospect for us to have a flourishing future is non-existent. So, what I want to do, Lynn, is would you and Chris be up to committing to the first Tuesday of every month as just part of our Diamond Network program, and the subject of sustainability? And would you describe your method of architecture as permaculture?
We call it full circle farming.
Yeah.
It
You're
incorporates aspects of permaculture and excuse
me. I wanted to dwell on permaculture. You're familiar with the permaculture technology in agriculture? The word?
Absolutely, yes. I have.
Yes.
I am quite familiar with it.
In answer to my question, in essence, you're not a strict permaculturalist.
No, we're not strict to anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just from the sustainability standpoint, that it's the main thing that I see is, and the other question I had was, are you established as an individual entity that can be scalable to the rest of to the rest of the country and the world?
Only if people are interested. We can't make it happen from here, but yes, I think it's a model that could be easily replicated.
And putting the thought to you to devoting 1 hour a month to you or Chris being on the program, is that even feasible?
We've been having some conversation with Sunny about that, and we're not ready to make that commitment just now, but we kind of, we're exploring that. So that's something that will be discussed offline and
my background is in mechanical engineering, and my whole focus is to build self-sustainable grow houses, large ones, so that we can put these. Have you heard of the garbage warrior in Taos, New Mexico? He is a licensed architect that has been building habitat out of garbage for the last 15, 20 years. And
sounds cool.
Yeah, and I mean they are beautiful homes, and basically when he's done, the structure is a heat sink, so the internal temperatures don't vary that much, and he is developing the gardens right within the structure, But what I want to do is work on getting a structure that's built with and you're basically garbage warriors too, because you're looking for everything that you can utilize that's free, and he does exactly the same thing. And so what I'd like to do, and I haven't contacted him, his you can Google him to do some researches. Michael Reynolds is the architect, and you just Google Garbage Warrior, and he has some videos that you could look at to see what he's done out there.
I think he's also called them Earth Ships, because I recognize the name.
Exactly. That's what it is, exactly. And so what? I haven't contacted him yet, but if we can, get this thing scalable, and obviously you guys have created the model, like Buckminster Fuller says, don't fight the existing order, just create a better model that makes the old model obsolete. So you guys are just like to me, manna from heaven, because this is a trend, and it's going to happen out of necessity. We have to learn how to live without money, because nobody's going to have any. So necessity is the mother of invention, and I consider both of you guys real blessings at the appropriate place and time. Isn't it mysterious how the universe produces what we need? And
absolutely.
Yeah, and so anyway, having said that, I really think you're a fundamental part of what this program is all about, and agriculture is the foundation of everything. So if you're able to at least commit to just 1 hour a month, that'd be like the cornerstone of our program.
Yeah, let them just decide and see what feels right for them. I know we don't want to put pressure on them to do anything.
No, it's not. It's not a pressure. Yeah. It's just a request, and because she's here and we're here and the need is here, but obviously if Len and Chris decide that they really can't do it, that's not a problem. We'll just we'll have to settle for a little bit of caviar once in a while, not every month.
Right. Well, when the inspiration strikes, and Chris may want to be on again in the near future, we'll just see how that unfolds. But it's been great to have the two of you. Like, I think Chris was on December 1st, if I remember correctly.
The other thing I wanted to mention while we're right on this subject is that, not everybody is interested in all things, but if we could develop consistency in the theme of a program at least once a month, then all those people that are interested in that specific subject, we know we could be totally devoted to it. And, there's so many things that we have yet to discuss and learn that, at least the next foreseeable future, for the next 12 months, we could fill a program.
Well, we'll see how everyone feels moved and motivated.
Well, Len, listen. I think. What time is it getting to be? Close to.
It's 3:30. I mean, it's 6:30 here in the Pacific area. Yeah.
And listen, Len, I tell Chris, give him my love and everything, and that at an appropriate time and place, once I make the contact with Michael, then we might have Michael and you and your husband on the show at the same time to discuss the scalability, how we can push this forward in other communities, and so when the crisis happens, when they have the big hiccup, all our stomachs are full, so we're not going to have any really major problems. We just got the adjustment and the transition is going to be a lot easier.
I guess all I'm saying, Dale, is just that anything is possible, and it just seems like the time that we're on the call together is maybe not the best use of the call time to talk about the structure and the format and future. And so we'll have those conversations offline, and that way the people who are listening can, focus on hearing about what the guest is sharing and not so much about the process that you guys are going through to create the program.
I just wanted to put it out there in the ether, and then we can we can start digesting it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yep, you got to start a compost pile well in advance.
Yeah. Let the microbes do their work.
There you go. Well, Sonny, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here and give me the opportunity to share. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm so glad you could be here, and I am now needing to say farewell because I have to sign a paper. But thank you all.
Good. Well,
good night, everyone, and thank you so much.
See you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Take good care. All right.
All
bye-bye.
right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Are you looking for healing or a change in your life to help you enjoy it more fully? You might benefit from a galactic energy reading and clearing from Chris Jacobs. Chris will work with you on a soul level to clear unseen negative influences, implants, programs, contracts, and energetic blocks. Chris Jacobs is a gifted energy healer. Contact him today at ChristopherStephenJacobs@gmail.com.